thank you for coming today for the March meeting of the Southern California Writers Association. As you know, you have joined, whether you know it or not, the group most intelligent, most beautiful, most wealthiest, fabulous writers on the face of the planet. And if you don't believe it, you could be true, because as writers, we do make things up. And instead, you really are among a cast of thieves, murderers, thugs, and that's the real group of us. So that's the face. Take your choice, take whatever picture you want, or add some to your own picture, some strokes. But welcome, we have writers from all different genre here. And we even added a genre. And Mark Silverstein mentioned that genre, just the name of it. If you could, if you're not muted, just mention the name of the new genre.
Young adult.
Young adult. So we have young adult, but even a younger and mixer. So he had a new thing. We have some good announcements for after the meeting for you that are really, really exciting. We have our new membership chairman with us, Karen Sue Walker. Karen, do you take a wave? Hello, how are you out there? Karen is a author of, tell them what kind of books you work with and write.
I write cozy mysteries. I have one series out and working on 2 new ones.
Works on 2 new ones, cozy mysteries, and she's a prolific writer, and series, she said, not just 1 or 2 books, but a series. And we're working with us on membership, and just a blessing to have her here. It's good to see friends, old friends, and nice to have you here. Judy Atkins, always good to see you. And you remember, we're going to go hit golf balls one day. And Julie, nice to have you with her new book. Julie has a new book out, and she's illustrated it herself. Tell us the name of it real quick. Oh, yeah, you're muted. Okay.
It's Chloe's Journey.
Chloe's Journey. And it's a wonderful story for young children to learn about responsibility. It's just great, about a dog that's seemingly abandoned. And it's from the dog's point of view. So there's so many clever things going on and happening here with all of us. And it's just exciting to be. But we have such great speakers today, and I'm trying to, writers, marketers. There's no one word, and Maddie will give you the introduction to them. We just have a lot of things going on, and we're so happy, the people that have responded to things, and from writing to producing to now recording to now doing all kinds of work. We're so happy to have our speakers with us today. And they agreed, and it's just because I think when the last time when they came, when we were live, they packed the house and everybody requested they should come back. So Maddie, why don't you introduce our speakers, and let's introduce our Vice President, Maddie Margarita, who finds all our wonderful speakers, who also puts together, our Hump Day whatever feature. And we thank you for doing that, Maddie. Maddie Margarita.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I have to echo Larry's sentiments about the last time Jonathan and Jynafer were here with us. I mean, you guys were electrified. It was like watching a stage show in an arena. So I know it's hard to have you back in this format, but we're so glad that you're here and joining us for Cracking the Code. I know you guys are such highly sought after speakers, as well as being such inspirational and generous people on your own, which is as important. So we appreciate that as well. So I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about you both, and then turn the Zoom camera over to you. Jynafer Yanez is an international bestseller who owns his own publishing company. In 2020, the publishing company delved into audiobook production. His work is being translated for the foreign markets. And as Larry said, we were talking to Jonathan and Jynafer earlier, and their company just opened in Germany. So that's their foreign production. And also they're involved in audiobooks, as I said, and under negotiation for a film adaptation, as well as having a almost one-year-old baby. So they have a lot of productions going on at their house. Also, Jynafer has been advertising on Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, BookBub, YouTube, and email campaigns for authors in her publishing imprint, as well as for author clients for over 5 years. Prior to that, she was an account supervisor at an advertising agency in Newport Beach. And now, as I said, they are dynamic individually, but together they are unstoppable. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera over to you guys to talk about publishing your book and releasing your book. So thank you again for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. I used to think that time was our most valuable asset until I really started digging deeper into that concept and realized that focus is actually our most valuable asset. Because I mean, how many hours out of the day do you have like 100% completely zeroed in on what you're doing? And for me, if I'm speaking honestly, maybe a couple hours, maybe just like 100% in it, laser focused. So I wanted to thank you for being here with us. Like Maddie was saying, we run a pretty interactive conversation. I know that might be harder since we're on Zoom. So what Jen and I are going to try to do is every few slides, go ahead and pause for a second so you can get your questions in, because we're in here for you. We use a Socratic means of teaching, so it's more of a conversation. Instead of us just talking at you for an hour, we would rather talk with you for an hour to answer questions that you may have, right? Because it's not going to help you if we're giving you what we think you might need, but it will help you if we're giving you exactly answering the questions you exactly have.
So we're very humbled to be welcomed back to your fabulous group of thieves and whatnot, murderers. So just, yeah, really honored you guys could have the, anyone, you could pull anyone. So thank you for having us. We're happy to share what we've learned and just help other people along their author journey. So we have a presentation slideshow today, so we'll be bringing that up, and that will be our focus here. So that way you could see what we're speaking to.
And what we're going to be doing is, you'll see on the slideshow, we're going to touch on a couple of different topics, but we would like to spend the bulk of our time talking about how to successfully launch a book, and then also talking on advertising on Amazon. So we'll spend the bulk of our time there, but we'll touch on some other topics as well.
If you just nod your heads, if you can see the cracking the code sign. Okay, great. So that's just our little intro slide. Sorry. All right. What we're going to talk about is a launch plan, advertising, and then we'll share some resources that we've used. And since we'll be sharing this presentation with your group, with Maddie and Larry and everyone, we'll also include links to some of the resources that we're speaking to, so that way you don't have to get lost in the Google search. I don't know how many times I've gone on to Google or Facebook to look up something that I needed to, and then 5-10 minutes later, I'm wondering, where did I even start and why am I scrolling again? So we'll send you the direct links.
All right, so we like to think about launching a book as preparing your horses for war, right? Like you're a battle conqueror going into battle, and you have your troops that are in different areas of the battlefield, and you would like all your troops to work towards the same goal, right? Into promoting and reaching readers and selling your book. So we call that preparing our horses for war. So we're getting everything ready to work in tandem with one another, getting all the troops ready and organized. So the first thing that we have is preparing your book, right? So that means a professional cover. It means professional editing, formatting, and uploading on Amazon. And then did you want to talk about the second one?
Newsletter swap. So one of the things that is free and available to all authors is a newsletter swap. We will go into what that looks like and how, but just letting you know that these are the things that we have typically use and see many other authors using. Some people, especially I've had some clients who come over from traditional publishing who feel uncomfortable and say like, aren't I just filling my newsletter with a bunch of clutter? People sign up for my newsletter to hear what I have to say. Why would I send them other authors? Well, it's all in the delivery. So what he ended up doing was saying, here are some books from the indie community you may be interested, or books that I would be willing to put my name behind, because as we know, readers who are just consuming content, they will read your book and about 7 others in the same week. So why not give them a recommendation? You're building trust and creating relevance with them. We did a survey this past year. I think it's going to be an annual thing. We'll survey all of our readers, and it seems to be a best practice amongst those authors who have a pretty decent sized following, to get an idea of what they're interested in, just checking temperature on different things. So we wanted to know, how do they actually feel about the newsletter swaps? Where did they find Jynafen initially? So that was the question. Where did you first encounter Jynafen? And 32% said that they encountered Jynafen in another author's newsletter. So if a third, approximately, of Jonathan's responding, engaged, reading, avid fans found him in another author's newsletter, it seems to make sense that we would continue to do those.
And just to even back it up further, if you're wondering what a newsletter swap is,
Oh.
basically you would find a author who writes in the same genre you do. So that'll be on the next slide too, but just to give you a heads up, same author, same genre that you do. And you would ask that author like, hey, I have a new release, a book that's coming out. Would you be willing to share my book in your email to your fans? And in return, I can do the same for you. So in a nutshell, that's a newsletter swap. And then number 3, we have announcements to existing readers and followers. So that's your own platform. So that's your own newsletter. We recommend that you would get a Facebook page and a Facebook group. That's where we have found that a lot of readers are on Facebook these days. So they're able to join the conversation and be part of a community rather than just being talked out. And some of them do. Some readers do prefer just to be on a newsletter. They don't want to be on Facebook or a group, and that's fine. But at least you have the option. You have the option for them to be engaged and to interact and find other like-minded readers who would be in the same Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing like talking to a good friend or someone about a scene in a book or as part of a story that you were really captivated by. So that's what they're able to do in the group. There's so many times where they have similar interests, and so they'll bring that up. And what we've seen, for example, in our group is, unbeknownst to us, there is a very big long haul trucker community who enjoys Jonathan's books. And so they end up planning meetups as their routes allow along the paths across the country. And so that has been one of the coolest things, is what could be an otherwise kind of isolated, lonely day, they're able to create that kind of community. And one driver in particular will share his morning scenes with the group, so everybody's kind of there with him.
And then I know a lot of this might be better if it was visual. Like, I'm a visual learner myself, so if you want to kind of see what this looks like in real terms, if you go to Facebook and just type in my name, so it's Jynafer Yanez, and then I call my group the Reading Wolves. So if you go Jynafer Yanez Reading Wolves, you can ask to be in the group, and of course we'll let you in. You can kind of see exactly what we're talking about, like play out on a day-to-day basis.
And then my favorite part of the launch would be advertising. And some of the most commonly available options are Amazon ads, Facebook ads, BookBub, which is a reader platform, and then promotional sites. So some folks may have heard of things like Robin Reads and Bargain Booksy, Free Booksy, some of those sites. And so that would be the promotional sites.
And those promotional sites, in a nutshell, all they have is they have email lists. So they'll have email lists of readers who like cozy mysteries, and email list of readers who like children's books, and email lists of people who like sci-fi noir. So you would contact them and get on their schedule. And of course, it's a fee for them to blast out or send out your book to their newsletter.
And it ranges from anywhere from maybe like $20 per insertion to I think e-reader news today is like $199 or $150, but you get the premier spotlight on their newsletter, or only spot on that particular newsletter will be on their Facebook and on their website. So and those types of promotions are usually they're looking for something that's a brand new release or a discount. So those readers are going to be bargain book hunters.
Yeah, we would recommend on that, if you decide to use the promotional sites, to kind of gauge it. So if you decide to run one on Thursday, you should be able to see a bump in sales. If you don't see that big of a bump in sales, then you can know that like, hey, maybe this email list isn't as effective. And then you can try a different one. So definitely keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and there are some that are stronger for certain genres than others. We don't have any to recommend specifically. We've at this time stepped away from using them, but I do know there are some authors who enjoy using them still.
Yeah, and we still use a couple of them though. We still use
Oh, we do?
Binge Books and
Oh, I
Shelf
didn't
Space.
think Bendy Books and stuff. Okay.
So
Sorry.
yeah, so to Jen's point though, what she's saying is I think that, I mean, we've been doing this for so long now. I've been writing for 9 years. So we've used a lot of the promotional sites. So lately, so we don't inundate it with our own content. We've kind of taken a
Thank you.
step back. So there's a couple that we still kind of use off and on, but we've kind of already been down that road and we don't want to oversaturate.
Okay.
So this is what we were talking before with newsletter swaps. So going back to that campaign that we engaged our readers and we're asking them questions, 78.6% of them found it helpful to see recommendation for other reads in our author newsletter. So I think that's because, I mean, the readers already trust you, they know you, they're on your newsletter. So if you recommend another book, they know that it's coming from a good place. And like Jen was saying earlier, a lot of our readers are just voracious. They'll go through a book, they'll wait till midnight when the book comes out, and then they'll read it like in 3 hours or 2 hours, just speed reading. They'll be like, oh, I can't wait for the next one. And I'm thinking like, come on guys, that took me like 3 months to produce to get out there. And they're like, when's the next one coming out? So, I mean, it's a good problem to have, don't get me wrong. But in the meantime, I mean, they're always reading, right? So it's easy for us to be able to recommend, you know, a book or two for them to go ahead and read. Because if they're not reading ours or a friend's, they're going to be reading somebody else's.
Okay, so what's key about that is that it's a clean list, that the author's books or genre is similar to your own, well, whatever book you're promoting. That size doesn't always matter. I've heard of people say, oh, they only have 500 in their list. Oh, like they have a couple hundreds. It's, well, if those couple hundred people have never heard of you and have never seen your book before, then that's better than having a list of a couple thousand if they've all seen your book already. So size doesn't always matter. And then finding author friends. You want to talk about how you made those connections and some ways to find authors to swap with?
Sure. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different places, especially on Facebook, where you can go different groups and different pages. Or, I mean, even your own community that you have here, this great community that you've built. If you find somebody, you know, who's also writing in the same genre that you're writing and you're both, you know, working hard to grow your email list and your platforms, then there might be an opportunity there where you guys can cross promote and share each other's work, help promote each other. There's a saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. So I don't think that we're in competition with each other at all. Like we're talking about, those readers will tear through a book in hours. I mean, even if it took a reader, you know, a month to read a book, a lot of us aren't able to, you know, produce a book a month. That means they're going to read somebody else's. So we're not in competition with each other. We can only help each other out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's also the networking groups on Facebook. So if there's a book for urban fantasy authors, a book for poetry, or excuse me, a group for poetry authors and things of that sort. So it'd be fine. And you could put up a post and say, hey, I have a book that's going to go out in a month or whatever it's going to launch, and say, would anyone be interested in doing a newsletter swap? And you can kind of take the conversations from there.
Should we pause here, Maddie? Does anybody have any questions on anything before we keep on rolling?
Yeah, I think we had Sharon was wondering, I think back before when you were talking about the different groups that on promotional groups, you mentioned a reading something and she didn't quite get the second word. I think it was one of the sources. Let's see, it was Robin Reads, free
Booksy, bargain Booksy, fussy librarian.
Okay. All right.
E-reader.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Your Facebook group was the Wolves.
Reading Wolves.
Reading Wolves. I think that was it, Sharon. Okay. All right. Okay. That's great. Okay. No, I think we're good so far.
So this slide is just talking about where you can interact with the readers. So readers are all over the place, but I feel like we only have so much hours in a day. We have only so much focused time in each day. So we've personally taken upon ourselves just to be invested in a newsletter, growing our newsletter, growing our Facebook page and group. And then lately, when the pandemic hit, I tried to look at everything as an opportunity. So when the pandemic hit, I was like, this is giving me time. This is giving me an opportunity. Where can I grow our business in this opportunity? So pre-pandemic, I had an Instagram account, but I wasn't very active. And then with the pandemic, I just used it again as an opportunity to see how I could grow my business. So we started getting into Instagram as well. And Instagram is easy to use because it connects to your Facebook account. So if you did like an Instagram post, it could also share to your Facebook page. So it's a limited amount of work. It might sound like a lot, but it's not as bad as if you take, again, just that focus time, 10, 15 minutes a day to be able to post to your accounts. Oh, this is my new favorite saying: seek discomfort, only then can you grow. We're a big believer that in comfort, almost by definition, I don't think that there's a lot of growth, right? For me, comfort usually means maybe like sitting on the couch, watching some sort of like action comedy, probably eating something that I shouldn't be eating. In my mind, that's where I go for comfort for me. So there's not a whole lot of growth in that. But with our company, as our company continues to grow and year after year, we look at different business opportunities and different ways to grow. A lot of the times that means putting ourselves out there or taking a chance. I mean, I can remember not that long ago, I didn't really like talking in front of people. It wasn't something that I cherished or I looked forward to. But years ago, I kind of took this mantra and told myself, I'm not going to grow and I'm never going to be good or comfortable talking with people if I don't start doing it. So that's kind of like an action that I took to seek discomfort so I could grow.
Mm-hmm. So for some of us, that may be reaching out to other authors for that newsletter swap. It may be digging into some of the data for the advertising, any one of those areas, hitting publish, being willing to publish some of the work that we've held near and dear to our hearts for so long.
I don't want to get too deep on you, but our 4-year-old keeps, what was she saying? Oh, we were doing a puzzle and the puzzle was difficult. And she was just saying that, I'm not good at this puzzle. I'm not good at puzzles. So we just had a talk and I told her, I was like, Josephine, Joe, you are what you tell yourself you are. So if you keep on telling yourself in your head that you're not good, that you can't do it, for authors, it might be like, nobody wants to read my book. It's not good enough. I can't do all this marketing. Well, then guess what? If you keep on telling yourself that, you're not going to do it, right? Because you're convincing yourself that you can't. But if you can convince yourself the other way, tell yourself like, hey, maybe I could take one step. I can learn one action item today. I can send one email. I could find one author to connect with. Then you're already ahead of the curve, and that's how it starts.
Mm-hmm. This is what a typical launch plan looks like for us. So we're looking at this week by week. We have a pre-order alert that goes out about a week before the actual launch. We'll send a newsletter to our email list.
That's what NL means, just
newsletter. Yeah, it's the orange. The following day, we'll do a Facebook post. We'll do them in the group and the page. Then leading up to it, we'll do another newsletter launch that says, hey, book's coming out today with the link to the book. Maybe include an excerpt. And then we'll start ads. I don't typically do any paid advertising on a book until it's out because the return is a little bit lower. I want people to be able to click, buy, and read, not have any hesitation about, well, I wanted to read something right now and now I have to wait, because then I've just paid for their attention and there was no follow through on it. And there was no follow through available to them. We'll also talk about doing some newsletter swaps. The newsletter swaps can fall anywhere within a few weeks after the book is out. So I've kind of placed them randomly. Folks tend to have their books, their newsletters go out on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Maybe there's a couple authors who have Fridays. And then the following week, we'll do another email. So when we're not doing a launch, we'll do an email. Is every other week, correct?
Every other week.
Every other week.
Twice a month.
Mm-hmm. But I have some author clients who do twice a week, every week. They'll do a Tuesday and Saturday morning every week, like clockwork. they have a lot of books coming out. So we'll do the follow-up email on a week later and just letting them know if you haven't received it, if you haven't purchased it yet, if you haven't gotten your copy, whatever it is, here is the link again. And then we might include a couple of reviews or comments from readers as a way to entice them and let them know, hey, this is actually good. Here's the reception. It also triggers the whole word of mouth and peer influence on the purchase. So that's typically what a launch schedule will look like. And I'm wondering if there are questions here, Maddie.
I don't see any right now.
Great.
I think, yeah, I think as we go through it, I'm sure we'll come up with some.
And what Jen was talking about before about not necessarily running a lot of ads on pre-orders, right? That's what you're saying. So we have found that we want to make it as easy for the consumer, our readers, to purchase the book and start reading as possible. So I feel like anytime, because we used to do cover reveals, we used to do things to get the people excited, but we would have nowhere to direct them yet, right? It would be like, here's a cover reveal for my book, get excited, and everybody's excited, and there's nothing for them to do, and then they kind of go back to Netflix or to whatever else they were doing, surfing the Facebook feed or whatnot, right? So a lot of times now we'll save those covers until we have a book or a product or an action for them to take. So we're kind of like building up. So it's not just like, here's the cover, be excited. It's here's the cover, go ahead and click on the book's out, or you can pre-order it now, just an action item. So save up that momentum that you have for when you have an action for your readers to take.
Okay, here's the nitty gritty. We're getting into advertising. If anyone was with us before, this is the slide we used last time, but I think it's important to review the purchase path. It's the author's version of a sales funnel. So a person interested in reading, they have the consideration phase. Then they'll go on to, for all intents and purposes, we are currently on Amazon, so that's where we make all of our sales. So that's what I'm going to focus on here, is our advertising, our Amazon search. So they'll go into Amazon and do a search query. Then they'll see a book cover. If the book cover is interesting, they'll go to the book sales page. If they go to the book sales page, they're going to read the blurb and description. If they like what's in the blurb or description, they'll do the look inside. Then they, if that goes well, they'll purchase the book, they'll read it and have a good experience. They'll either want to continue with the series or continue with you as an author. They'll love you so much, then they'll want to ultimately get to know you. And that's where they'll follow you. They'll sign up for your newsletter. They'll follow you on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, platforms that is appropriate that you've used for your market. I didn't realize how important the look inside was until we did the survey. I thought that the blurb or description would be more important than the look inside. But when people said they made their decision, there was an overwhelming response that said the look inside, which is that first couple of pages, is what helped, like, cemented their purchase decision. Of course, they wouldn't have gotten there if the steps previous to that weren't appealing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get into where the starred section is the search section. That's where the Amazon ads come into play.
And real quick, when Jen was talking about the look inside, I forget who said it. I'm sure somebody knows, but another author smarter than myself said, the first few pages of your current book sells that book, and the last few pages of your book sells the next book. So it kind of makes sense and fits into this analogy too, where if they look inside, those first couple pages have to grab them, have to hook them. And that's why too, I mean, it's the same thing in movies or TV shows. A lot of the times when you start watching a movie or a TV show, it starts off with some sort of, like if it's a mystery, there's the murder or the weapons found or the body, or if it's an action movie, then there's a big action scene that takes place at the beginning. It's the same thing. You have to hook them.
So what we've been using is called the cost per click CPC bids. So you're vying for that spot against other people based on your bid to drive traffic. We're driving traffic to your book sales page. We're not selling them in the ad. We're only driving them to the next step in that purchase path. Cost per click means that you are paying every time someone clicks on that ad. The other one that's available is cost per impression, and that is paying just so that way your ad can be displayed in front of a reader's eyes. The three main areas or platforms for advertising have been Amazon, Facebook, and BookBub. Today, we're just going to focus on Amazon. Maybe in a future time, we can go into Facebook. However, there are lots of tutorials. So if you feel comfortable with Amazon, you might be able to navigate and get started on Facebook. Okay. These are the places that these ads show up. The phone on the far left, I think it's left, is a Facebook ad, which you've all have seen Facebook ads. The big screen in the middle is going to be where we see Amazon ads. So if that, and then it's also in the search query. So if someone searches for a book and has a whole list of books that fit that name or that title or that genre, whatever they've looked up that keyword, there will be list, and then there'll be one that says sponsored, and it looks like it's just part of the list. And then the black and white one is the lock screen app available on Amazon. And then the bottom right one with the red, that's a BookBub ad. So again, we're just going to be focusing on the center two, but I wanted to let you know so you just have that in the back of your mind and have some comparison records. Okay, this is super important. If you don't know who you're targeting, you're never going to reach the person that you want to work with. Or for us, if you don't know who you're targeting, you're never going to reach the right reader. It's not about the amount of people that click on your ads or that see your ad. It's the right people. Because if I start advertising, Jonathan mentioned earlier, he's into action adventure or action comedy movies, but I start advertising to him with some historical romance, maybe some YA historical romance stuff. It doesn't matter how many times I show him that ad, he's not going to click it. And if for some reason he clicks it, there's a very low likely chance he's going to buy it. If I were to change my ad and focus only on the action, don't even show the queen or the princess who wants to be a queen, who wants to outsmart her mother-in-law in order to win her beau's affection and get the crown. It doesn't matter what I show him. And even if I convince him, once he looks into it, he's not going to buy it. So we got to know our audience.
That's an important step and something that I feel we learned the hard way. I don't know about you all, but I feel like a lot of times I learned the hard way. I learned by doing and failing and then just doing it better the next time. But early on, when I was writing young adult fiction, I thought my audience would be young boys, because I thought like, hey, this is the main character is in his early teens. So I thought maybe like that's where early to mid-teens. So I figured that was my audience, right? I was writing for them. Boys in their early and mid-teens care about video games. They're not, I mean, I'm sure, don't get me wrong, it's like a bell curve. I'm sure there's a small percentage of boys who would rather, go read a book instead of playing video games or watching a show.
In terms of making sales.
Yes, but that bell curve, the big middle of that bell curve is going to be boys playing video games. They're not interested, right? So that was my very first series. So the launch of that series and the marketing plan was all wrong. So since then, Jen has been helping us understand who exactly our audience is. So we know exactly the type of person that we're advertising to. We know exactly what they like. We know exactly what type of music they like. We know exactly what type of movies they like to watch. So we're able to almost use references from like music and movies and things that we know that they like in our advertising.
And other books. So, okay. And I will show you, go more into how that fits into advertising. So the targeting. This is a good visual representation. I'm borrowing it from Facebook. But what they show is if your audience is too broad, which is the yellow, you won't have the right person to find. And so you're going to advertise to too many people. If you get too specific, it's too narrow. You won't have enough people to look at your ad if you're only focusing on one individual. You want to get something very balanced in between. And some of the things that we consider when we're targeting, overall, you're kind of coming up with the meme or the avatar of who your reader is. So you might consider age, gender, interests, also box, which means other books that they've read. Facebook lets you target e-reader type, any TV and film that they would be interested in. Why that's important to say, I'm sorry, I'm going to go ahead and speak to both, but why that's important to say on Facebook is because a lot of the authors that we know and follow, or you would think that, we can target those readers, they're not considered targets on Facebook. Or on Amazon, everybody's targeting Ernest Cline. Everybody's targeting, oh, I just forgot her name. Pippa DaCosta, or the author of Outlander, anyone writing historical romance, like everyone's going to be targeting those top names who's had their books, become these long-term bestsellers. So we don't want to target that same exact thing. Their general interest, page follows, and then there's more. Here's kind of how we look at it. There is no reader or no book that is only one genre or only one focus. What's so beautiful about all the stories everyone is crafting, or the tales or the recounts of their memoirs, of their nonfiction, is that it straddles multiple areas. So this is an example I use for a recent client. Her story is urban fantasy women. It's a super, super popular genre right now, is paranormal fiction for women, not young girls, not the 18-year-olds, not the 20-year-olds. So it's midlife as well. So that was important to call out. But she does have, it's not just innate magic where the main character just woke up and she found out she had magic. I mean, she's in her 30s, 40s. So it revolves around tarot cards. And so occult fiction was another part of her targeting. And I did notice as I began to look into it, it kind of had, it's not steamy. It's not bare-chested man cover. It's not main character wearing leather. She's high fashion. So it was sort of Devil Wears Prada, but it's a mystery thriller. So I included, in terms of targeting, some of that type of audience here for non-steamy mystery and occult. So there's going to be different areas where all of these three buckets overlap. And then there's the very small section where they all overlap. So just going to urban fantasy women would be too broad. Going to urban fantasy women that is also into tarot, occult fiction, and also likes these non-steamy sort of thriller mysteries is too narrow. So I'm more so looking for these areas where like the two circles overlap. So think about your books and your stories and your poetry and your content in that kind of way when you're thinking about targeting.
Yeah, so many times I hear authors say, like when we're asking them who their audience is, they're like, oh, everybody. This book is for everybody. Everybody would like to read this. And we're like, really? Really? Everybody is going to want to read your book? Like, let's be real with ourselves and understand who our audience is. And, because there's no shame in it. Like, I understand not everybody's going to love my books. Not everybody's going to want to read your books. And that's fine. That's okay. We got to go find your people. I call my people, my readers, my pack. So our emblem, our logo for our company is the wolf. So if you go to the Facebook, it's Jonathan's Reading Wolves. If you look at our company logo, it's a distressed wolf. So it's the same thing. You just got to find your pack. Your pack of readers are out there and they're looking for you too, which is the funny thing, right? They're looking for the books that you have to offer, the books they like to read. So don't worry that your market isn't, or your advertising isn't geared towards everybody. It's not supposed to be geared towards everybody, and that's okay.
Okay. I'm going to jump into the next section of targeting. Were there any outstanding questions for the first part of targeting?
I think we're good, Jennifer.
Great, thank you all. All right, also bots and categories. So we're looking at relevant categories, Amazon bestsellers within your genre and categories, and other also bots. So here we go. This is how I would look at targeting categories. This is going to work in a couple of different ways. When you upload your book to Amazon, it asks for keywords and categories. This is work I did for a really funny sort of satirical noir book for Kevin J. Anderson. Excuse me. What I wanted to find was a category that had a lot of interest, didn't have too much competition, and had reasonable average monthly sales, or just looked like they were doing well. So it needed to be enough people looking at it, but not too many people trying to be in it. Where I used these categories was I used them when we uploaded his book to Amazon, and also for my targeting. So within literature and fiction, there's humor and satire, and then there's a section called humorous. So Amazon lets you target a lot of these just by categories. So you don't have to type this in, you go to the categories section and you select these categories. So Amazon will then use your ad to show everyone in those categories, or anyone looking up those categories or looking up a book similar to those categories. I also would use these as keywords when I'm putting in words that I want to bid on specifically. So if someone puts in humorous, my book may come up. Urban legends, dark comedy. So you see how some of these work together to tell a kind of story that what this book is about. And I will call out that there is a book section of Amazon and there's a Kindle store section. They do not have the same categories. So you just need to poke around and look at those and see where your book might fit in, and see what words stand out to you that seem to identify what someone would be looking for when they're searching for your book. So we have satire. So what kind of comedy? Is it just tongue in cheek? Is it potty humor? Is it just slice of life? Is it awkward? I don't know. So that tells us more with the satire, the humor, dark comedy. Then we get into the vampire and urban legends, ghosts, and occult. Keywords.
Jynafer, before I'm going to jump in here, we've got a question. It says you're saying that you prefer categories not to competitive. I'm reading the question. I'm not sure I understand this totally. She prefers categories not to competitive, but how do you know that, and what are the metrics you use or look for, and where do you find them?
Yep, absolutely. So what I look at within the category, so it's like a bestseller category, you've clicked into that category and has all the books lined up on the screen. If you click on that book, you can see where it falls in the Amazon bestseller ranks. I look at book 1, book 10, and book 20 to see how many or how competitive it is. So if book 1 in that category is number 1 in the Amazon store, I know that there's no way, like that book is super competitive. But if number 20 is somehow like 5, what's a good number? 54,000?
Yeah, so I think like in a nutshell is Amazon has a rank for all their books. They rank all the books, right? And it's always changing. What's book number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to like the millions. So you're looking for your category. So we'll just say that your category is knitting for cats. So we'll say you're looking at all the knitting for cat books. You want to make sure that those books aren't very highly ranked, because if they are very highly ranked, it's going to be harder. It's going to be more competitive.
But not too low.
Right. So you have to hit the sweet spot, right? You don't want your books in that category to be so competitive that you're not going to be able to get your ads shown in front of the right people. And you don't want them to be so low where nobody's interested in that anyway, so they're not going to find you or look it up.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I got too technical.
Yeah, well, I know it's a difficult concept to try to explain over a Zoom chat, but if you go to an Amazon page and you look at the top 100 bestsellers, you can start seeing how books are ranked, and you want to find a category where your book will be able to fit that, again, isn't so highly competitive, where it's only like the top 100 books in Amazon are in there, and it's not so low competitive where, it's like in the millions because nobody's searching for those books.
Okay. When you put your book in Amazon, it asks for keywords. So taking those categories from the previous slide, these are some of the keywords that we came up with to categorize the book, to describe the book. These are also keywords that we would begin to use as our sort of foundation for developing the whole keyword list on our advertising. Amazon lets you create a campaign. And then from that campaign, you get to have multiple, they're called ad groups. And in the ad group, you could have 1,000 keywords. We can come up with keywords all day, but we want to have keywords that are relevant to your book, that communicate your book and the interest. So going back to having the right targeting, not for everybody. Who is your reader? What are they looking up? And then we'll talk about bids in a little bit. So these are just some of the keywords. So it's, it's not just one word. That's another thing. People think keywords is it one word? No, it's multiple words. It's sort of a phrase. It's a combination of different things people are searching. When you have a moment, at some point, go to Amazon, and in the search bar and little search feature, change like where it's searching to the Kindle store, and then just start typing in a word that would describe your book. So for Jonathan's book, instead of just typing in sci-fi, I might start typing in military sci-fi. I would look at science fiction versus sci-fi, and then it auto-populates whatever it is you're typing in based on what people are searching for most commonly. Use those words. I will see it populate sci-fi romance. I'm not going to do that and use that as a keyword, even though that might be the #1 auto-populated phrase that Amazon suggests, because there are not shirtless men running around in Jonathan's books. There's not passionate love scenes in Jonathan's books. So if I were to do that, the cover wouldn't fit in with what those readers are looking for. And then they'd be sorely disappointed when that doesn't happen. And then they would leave a 1-star review if they finish the book, after being duped into buying and reading it. So, but it's a good way for me to see what people are currently searching. There are also some tools and resources available to help you populate those kinds of keywords. One of them is Publisher Rocket. And as I mentioned, or I think I mentioned, maybe I just mentioned it in my mind, at the beginning of all of this is, since we're making this presentation available, we'll also include links to some of these resources that we're talking about. So that would be Publisher Rocket. So there's a section where if you're looking up Amazon keywords, I would type in noir detective fiction, and they would populate a whole list of keywords and books that are relevant to that term. But before I purchased that, I would do the hunt and peck kind of digging in my mind as well as on Amazon. So I would type in the Amazon search bar, noir detective fiction, and I would see what comes up. And I would use some of those authors. I would use their series titles. I would also look at their descriptions, and I would notice that there are certain keywords that are common amongst the books that come up. A lot of them might use chronicles instead of series. Some people talk about epic journey, lit RPG. Like, there are words that books that are alike will continue to use over and over and over, and those can become keywords for your advertising. Okay.
Before you guys move on, Jamie has a question. Do you need to already know your target audience before you write? Or when you start, should you just have an idea and then go from there?
I think it would be helpful. You'd be ahead of the game if you knew your target audience before you wrote.
Well,
I don't think you have to. Like, you can still write a great book and not know exactly who your target audience is. But I know for me personally, after 9 years of doing this, if I had gone at the beginning, be like, okay, I'm writing for this demographic. I know these type of people are going to like this book. Then I can put in items or call outs or phrases that I know that they're going to enjoy. So like, our target audience is it 45 to 65 women?
47 and older. Right now you have a good mix, 50-50, because of your sci-fi stuff.
Oh, okay.
But it's your urban fantasy women.
Yeah, so 47 or older is my target demographic, and it was mostly women. Maybe that might have changed a little bit since I've been writing so much sci-fi. We've been getting more guys, but since I know that age group and I know who they are, I'm not going to try to make analogies now to like, I don't know what's going on today.
Billie Eilish side part scrunchies.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, Elon Musk right now doing whatever, but I will call out to Footloose, because I know everybody in that demographic and age range loves Footloose, and they know that song, and they'll give them a smile. or I'll call out to
Whitney Houston. Dance with somebody.
yeah. So I have in my latest book, I'm using Whitney Houston's "I Want to Dance with Somebody" for one of the songs that one of the characters is singing before they get into a fight. But yeah, so like those types of call outs. So
That's
because
because
you
you're
know,
writing like pop culture-y.
but because you know who
reference.
your audience is, you're able to kind of layer that into your writing, things you know that they will enjoy, you know that they're into.
That's called writing to market.
Yeah.
And that's something that you came to after you've kind of hit your groove.
That's what I was saying.
But
That's what
if
I'm saying. Like,
somebody is writing their first book or their first series, wouldn't it be better for them just to get something out and then discover?
yeah, that's how I started the conversation.
Sorry. Okay.
That's what I said. I was like, you don't have to know this, right? It's helpful if you do. You could still write a great book if you didn't know who your audience is. But if you did know who your audience was, you can layer in these things you know they love.
Okay.
Okay, and
That's
I have
how our business looks like, folks. It's
Yeah.
called healthy thrashing.
I'm sorry. Okay, so we have another question from Julie. Can you choose what pages are shown for the look inside on Amazon, or is that something Amazon chooses automatically?
I think it's just like the first certain percentage of your book, right? You don't choose what your look inside is. It's just like the intro, the table of contents, and the first few pages of your chapter 1.
Yeah, I believe there's a percentage. I don't know if it's like 2% or 5% that Amazon shows for the look inside. So obviously that would range if you wrote, an 1,000-page book, that first 2 or 5% is going to be a lot longer. If you wrote a 10-page book, then it's probably just going to be like the first page that they're showing, but it's a percentage.
But you don't get to choose if it's like a scene
No.
later on in the book.
No, you don't get to choose. Amazon decides like, hey, if a reader clicks on it, wants to check it out, they're going to get, this small percentage first to make their decision.
And I think that's also important because that is the whole ramp up of the book starting. If you don't get them in the first so many pages, they're not going to get through to that epic scene that you've shown. So it's not like a movie trailer where they get to just show the highlights and you're waiting for those scenes that they sold you on.
Okay, Anne says she thinks it's 10%. Okay.
Yeah. Great. So then I think everyone might be okay with keywords, categories. I'm going to work into the also bought section. So we're looking at authors who are similar to, and again, this is a sample from Kevin J. Anderson's book. And so looking at the type of book that he was writing and authors that are similar who have books that are similar. And so the background image really is about the interconnectivity of everybody's reading everybody. So somebody who read Terry Pratchett might go on to read Jim Butcher, who might be interested in Rick Galtieri, who might be interested in Annette Marie. And so in looking at those books that they've written and their series and their characters, to understand how to build out this targeting. So I'm gonna look at Terry Pratchett's book. I'm gonna look at not necessarily his high fantasy, but I would go into just targeting his titles that have a little bit more of the urban fantasy to it, or the one he wrote, I think you read it with Neil Gaiman. So those types of books. And you could target the author name. You can target their character name if they have a really popular character, like Patricia Briggs did, Marcy something. And then we can also target their series name and their book titles, because somebody's going to search any of those things, and it would be nice when they're searching if your ad showed up. And you can get as specific or as general as you like. So you can have no copy on your ad, so it's just your book cover. You could have, so say Deborah Harkness, I think she has the Discovery of Witches series. That's really popular. And so you can say, if you like Discovery of Witches, you'll love blah, blah, blah. Or if you want to get into it, I forget the main character's name. If you were captivated by so-and-so's strength, you'll fall in love with your character's name. Or you can just keep it generic. And you can just say, for, I don't know, a women's paranormal adventure, or she thought her life was set to coast until he entered the room, whatever it is. So your ad copy can vary depending on how you want to set up your ads. You can do no ad copy, you can do custom to that targeting, you can do general, or you could do super specific.
And I think that we already hit time. I think, are we almost done though? Maybe if we just sped through, is that okay, Maddie? If we just speed through the last couple slides? I think it's already 11.
Well, I can speak for everybody else. Go through at your pace because this is really, you guys, thank you so much. We're loving the detail and the pace is great. So you go through it. We're with you. So you
Okay.
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 Okay, so I think that's it for this. Oh, I'm gonna tell them how. So if you know in your mind a specific book or a specific author who is like yours, so you rack your brain and you say, I've come up with these 5 authors or these 5 series, but I couldn't get more than that, and I have up to 1,000 keywords to fill in. You want to try to make that list a bit more robust. If you go on to, there's 2 sources I go to: Google, source for everything, and Amazon, second source for everything. So on Google, if I type in Terry Pratchett, it would show me people that they also search for. People for Terry Pratchett also search for these authors. And you can look and see there's like little pictures across the top and it'll have their name. And you can see all these other authors that are kind of similar and French. And so you can also target those. I like to QC them first. I like to click on them and see what comes up. If I look at their cover and their covers don't look anything like with the genre that I'm trying to fit, then I won't use that person unless there's someone classic like Anne McCaffrey. I target her. I have some pretty good results for Jonathan's stuff because he writes science fantasy. There are dragons and werewolves in space. People who've read Anne McCaffrey sometimes enjoy Jonathan's books. But her covers aren't going to look anything like Jonathan's because she wrote in a different time. Covers look different then. The other place to look for additional targeting would be, as I mentioned, on Amazon. If I go to Jim Butcher's page on Amazon, on his author profile page, right underneath his picture is a list of also authors that are similar, and they'll have their name and picture, and I can click on them because they're links and see the books that they wrote and see, I think it's like 8 to 10 other authors that Amazon believes are similar to Jim Butcher. So it's like hunt and peck, and that's how you can build out your list. Okay, that's all I got for that section. It's a lot, I know, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, we're okay. Last slide.
Oh, we gotta get back over there.
Got to get back. There we go. So these are just resources that we use and that we can vouch for that have helped us along the way that we think might be helpful for you. So the email client we use is called SendFox. And before that, we were with MailerLite. If you're looking for like a business to use to build your newsletter.
It's easy.
Yes. Publisher Rocket is what Jynafer was talking about to help with keywords and categories, to help data mining and figuring out, where we get all these words from. There's a couple books at the bottom, Ads for Authors and Mastering Amazon Descriptions. And then the top 2 left are just podcasts that we listen to that help us. Which podcast do you think that you listen to that helps you
I
out
don't
the
listen
most?
to any.
No,
I stopped listening to the author. It was just too much for me.
So the one that I would recommend is the Sell More Book Show. I listen to it every week, and I really like the Sell More Book Show because they're one of the few author podcasts about the business who it almost feels like a news station. So they're not having, they're not interviewing somebody like most podcasts do.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually like mining the week's news and information on what's going on in the author community each week. So it's like a news show. And then Vellum, which is the last one, Vellum formatting software. So after you write your book and you have it edited, and if you had a beta team go through it and it's ready to go, we found Vellum really helpful in being able to format our book. That way it looks clean and professional once you upload it to Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it, folks.
Yeah. So for these books, I always wanted to talk to them. I read them. I'd been doing ads for a while, and I read them, and I found that these 2 were pretty easy to follow, understand, and touched on the points that I thought were most key. I also know both of these authors, so just looking at like their knowledge base, that's another thing is, don't write me a book if you're not able to execute and deliver all the stuff for yourself. And both of these, they happen to be men, but both of these gentlemen have done that. And so there's a bunch of different ways to learn and different styles and different conversations. And I found these 2, again, to be just of all the ones that I've read and the courses that I've checked into, pretty straightforward and helpful. So ad copy, that's key when you're looking at, if you're writing copy for your ads, you don't have to include copy in your Amazon ads, but you do in some of your Facebook stuff. You want to keep it brief, but impactful. And so Brian Meeks does a great job of that. Even he practices writing copy, ad copy every single day, multiple times. And then Chris, he's super busy. He's got a bunch of different things going on. So I appreciated how he was able to take this ads for authors and who hate math. That's the thing, ads for authors who hate math. And he talks about how to bid, how to analyze, make it easy. And so you're not spending hours a day on Excel sheets and charts and mining data. So I think we could all appreciate that, so we can get back to the things that we enjoy, like writing and reading. Okay, questions?
Okay, we do have a couple of questions. Karen says, for someone who doesn't have a beautiful wife to help you with marketing. Oh, laying it on, Karen. I like it.
Oh, Karen. What do you need, Karen? I got it.
Where would you focus your limited marketing time and money?
May I speak to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Can I answer, Karen? Okay. That's one of the things I love most about Chris's book is he breaks that down and says, you can do that in 30 minutes or less a day, about 30 minutes a day. So if you've got a few hours, 4 to 3 hours of your focus time, and you want to spend the majority of that writing, you can, he kind of shows you how to set it up. So there is steps. So one day you might spend 30 minutes just mining for keywords, and another day mining for also bots, and then one day mining and just working on ad copy, and then the fourth day, then you're going to implement it. And you're not going to be checking your ads every day. It takes time for Amazon and Facebook to show your ads, for there to be behavior worth tracking, to develop a anything with analyzing, that's called your learning period. And then the data is still updating after 3 days. So once I launch ads, I will check them just to make sure everything actually launched, so there were no problems. And then I'll go in every about 3 to 5 days, a couple of times, and then maybe once a week. So it's not a set it and forget it, but it becomes just to carry it along little by little, and then having these touch points. And as you develop the habits in that parts of your brain of how to analyze what you're looking for, like a muscle, you've grown it, it will take you less effort to maintain and update all of that.
Great. And I think one of the things that's clear to me, just as I'm listening to you, is this is a lot of work to put into one book. So I think this goes a long way towards motivating everybody to not be focusing on putting out that one book, and looking at this as an ongoing, it should motivate you to write another book, so that all this time that you're putting in doesn't end up with just one book. You can actually get great return on that. So that's interesting too.
Yeah, I think that's another key thing, is you're going to invest this time and the money for the ads. Series work best because it is it can be a competitive market. So if you're spending 80 cents to a couple of dollars to sell the one book, you want to make more money. And if your book's only $4.99, you took Amazon's cut, then you're only making, $1 or $2 a book. So, but if you're able to have books 2 and 3 in this series, then books 2 and 3, you don't advertise those. You're just advertising book 1. You make your return on the subsequent books in the series. But they could also work on some of the fiction, nonfiction, and other sort of seemingly standalone stories, where you connect them in a world or a topic. So to use Chris Fox's book as an example, this Mastering Amazon Ads, he has it as a Write Smarter and Faster. Is that it's Faster and Smarter series? So he's got about 6 books that look similar. They don't talk to each other. You don't have to have read one to use the other, but he has them in a series, so that way if someone has read one, they'll be inclined to read the other of his nonfiction work, for authors. So he's just advertising the one here and there.
Okay, great. And if you guys are done with your presentation, can we stop screen sharing, and that way we can see your faces? Okay, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, Jamie has a question. how do you approach creating your book cover? Also, how did you go from writer to having your own company?
So book covers, have you heard the saying that you can have it good, fast, or cheap? You can only pick two. So we realized like we could reach out to cover illustrators who we know are good and they already have a built up following. But a lot of times when we're reaching out to those cover illustrators, they were, $1,000, $2,000 for a cover. So, which I'm not saying they're not worth it, just so you know, that's a lot of money for us to invest in one cover. So we knew we couldn't have it fast. So we went to go look for it good. So the two places that I go to, one website's called ArtStation, and another place is just Instagram. So if you're on ArtStation, you start looking for whatever cover you might be interested in. So for me, it's mostly sci-fi. So I look up sci-fi artists, and then you'll have all these different sci-fi artists coming up. And then what I've found is I like football. So with football, a lot of times the teams will draft somebody who has a lot of potential, but it doesn't cost a whole lot of money yet because they're still kind of unknown. And I use that same philosophy for cover artists. So I look at covers and art that's really good, have a lot of potential, but maybe that artist just started off or they're not as well known. And that's where I spend my money because they don't have like a huge call for them or a huge pool for work yet. They're super excited to be working with an author because I know you and I understand that the eloquent life of an author isn't sitting behind our oak desks sipping on our whiskey and a cigar and doing book signings, right? We understand the work, how hard it is. But to other people, when you tell them that you're an author, they're like, wow, they have that mentality in their mind. You must be going to book signings and you must have all these adoring fans throwing money at you. So it's the same thing with cover artists. When you tell cover artists, a new cover artist, a new illustrator, like, hey, I'm an author and I would love to feature your work on some of my books. How much do you charge? They're like, oh, wow, this author's reaching out to me. They want to use my art and put it on display. So you can kind of like spin the conversation or position yourself as, like helping each other out. Like, this author, this illustrator, whether it's Instagram, you type in those keywords looking for an illustrator, or if it's ArtStation, you can almost position it as a partnership. Like, hey, you're helping me with these titles, and then your art is going to be displayed and featured to all kinds of different readers.
Mm-hmm. And so what I'll do is I'll look at other, we have in our mind kind of what it should be like. Then I look at other inspiration so that way it fits because it is part of the marketing. People look at the book cover and say, does this fit to what I'm looking to read? So I will look at top sellers that are similar to what we're producing, any outside content media. So for our upcoming series, Mandalorian from Star Wars world really fits into it similar. So I look at that content again. I looked at all the book covers that I could, and then from there began to like in my mind, what fits for our story? What is the type of art? What type of typography makes sense? What are the colors? Are they subdued? Is it an illustration? Is it graphic work from Photoshop? Is it a real photo or is it something graphically created with shapes? So someone who's doing YA Academy fantasy is going to have a very distinct look that's different from cozy mystery or cozy fantasy, urban fantasy. So I need to keep that in mind as far as what I'm looking for. I put all of my stuff together in a presentation document, and I'll put one page of just all the covers that are just reference, and then I'll have a page of like, what are my colors? What are the key elements? What is the style that I need from my artist? And that helps us to choose what kind of an artist we're looking for. And then I have a page for each book cover. So for book one, these are specific elements. This is how I want my hero standing. This is what's in the background. This is the weapon they're holding. This is et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we give our artists. We give them that full deck. So they have all of that information once we've settled on someone that Jonathan's recruited.
Okay. I think the second part to that question was how did we go from just writing to kind of like having a business?
Well, once you reach a certain dollar threshold, you need to protect yourself and your assets. And so from Jonathan's writing to incorporating, and then from there, as we grew, taking on other authors, having this kind of networking that we have here, and we do that in other circles and online, and then developing those relationships. And then, from someone asking questions to just dashing out some ideas to next thing you know, you had some co-writes. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of the industries, whether it's like a foreign market, like in Germany where we launched last year, or it's audiobooks, we started doing our own audiobooks this year. I just see how much money other production companies want to take, or other distributors you want to take. And I think to myself, I could do that. How hard could it be? That's the phrase that gets me in the most trouble. How hard could it be?
Very.
I could do that. And then I'm into it. I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done? But I'm already too far into it. I was like, all right, we got to see it to the end now.
Well, I think at audiobooks, once we looked into it, so we've been published with Audible, we've had contracts with them. We've also looked into some other companies to Podium, so they've done the work. So we know, like, there's getting in the queue, there's prepping the manuscript, there's having it produced in terms of recording and then edited, and then put out, marketed. So when we look at all of those steps, start saying, well, we do this anyway, we do this anyway, we do this anyway. So it's just that middle section. So then we worked with a company who can help us with that middle section. We tell them the type of artist we're looking for, they'll go, or narrator, look for them, they'll have them narrate, and then they QC it. And then they told us what their hourly rate was going to be. And then they weren't able to get us the talent we wanted, or even close to it. We met our minimum requirements. And so when it came down to it, we said, well, once we boil it down, how hard could it be? And if we have the capacity to do it, let's do it. Let's try it. If it doesn't work out, we'll give it back to the professionals. And so that's kind of how we've approached a lot of this stuff. And so far, so good. So, yeah. And
Let's
then
see, Janice has a question. Does vellum format for print and digital, or only one or the other?
No, it does both. Outside of marrying Jen, vellum's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and having kids.
whoa.
But yeah, it makes it super easy just to go ahead and get in there and format your book. Like, I've been using it so much now that maybe I can do it within like 20 minutes, maybe 15. I can put a manuscript in there and it formats, and it just spits out like a digital copy for you, and also a paperback copy for you. And you just upload those to Amazon.
Oh, Glenda, can't hear Glenda. Glenda, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I cleared that a minute ago. Okay, I have a tiny little question and then kind of a bigger one. All right, first of all, there's a little detail that I wanted to get. When you were talking about how you talk to your people, and this was quite a bit after you were talking about newsletter swaps, you do it through Facebook, through the Facebook page, the Facebook group, the Instagram, and what was the fourth one?
Newsletter.
All right, newsletters. Okay, now here's my other comment. When you talk about all the business aspects of it and getting all that stuff out, doesn't it affect, say, Jonathan, you do the writing? Doesn't it be where you can be so aware of all that stuff, it kind of would hurt the creative flow, because your head is going maybe rather sometimes than your creative juices or emotions.
Oh yeah, for sure. So when I've trained myself to kind of think of time, my focus time, as in blocks. So I wake up at 5 a.m. so I can try to get writing done before the family is up and running about. So at 5 a.m. I know I have this one block for writing. So that's all I'll do. So to your point, Glenda, I won't think about the business stuff or anything like that because it could interfere. And all I do is I get into that laser focused flow state and I just go. And then after that block of time is finished, then in between, I call them writing sprints. In between my writing sprints, I'll do the business side. So then I'm done with writing, take my writer's hat off, and then I focus on the business, answering emails or talking to narrators or other authors or whatever, and then I put that hat back on. And it's just discipline. It's just like, right, I didn't start off like that, but I've just trained myself to be laser focused.
So the two things to look into for that would be flow state. And then Chris Fox has the book about writing sprints and teaching you how to write in these blocks of time concentrated.
Okay, and also, if you have an author, let's say that's published a book and it's out there and it's not selling the way that they'd like it to sell, and they've uploaded it, they've independently published it, and they're looking to give that book a boost, and they don't have the kind of background that you have, or maybe the expertise, do you have like 1 or 2 hints for them or suggestions that they could start on that might give them the best results?
Yeah, Jen had that. It was a slide where it kind of showed the sales cycle, what readers do. So I would go through that sales cycle and start looking at things like, is your cover fit the genre? Is it what readers expect to see in your genre? And then the next thing is like the description. Is the description catching them? Is it hooking them? Is it what they expect to see? And you just start kind of like checking off those boxes to make sure each part of that sales funnel is accurate to your genre.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, okay, and then quickly, Jennifer, you talked about all the different places you can advertise.
Mhm.
If we're that same author who says, okay, I'm going to invest, I have that book out there, I want to see what I can do. What is the easiest platform, advertising platform to start on as for a novice? Is it Facebook? Is it Amazon? Is it, I think, BookBub? Is that what?
The best place would be
Best and easiest? Yeah.
Yeah, not easiest. The best place, and here's why. When we're talking about a cycle, a purchase behavior path, if you go from Facebook to Amazon, it's an additional click. You're having them change platforms, so you have a greater chance of them falling off. But on Amazon, it's the most direct. They're already in the buying mindset, not a scrolling mindset. So they're already there looking for books. You don't have to convince them of anything in terms of behavior to purchase behavior. So that would be the best place. And you're feeding the algorithm, so to speak. So if anybody clicks on your ad and your book gets more prominence, Amazon is going to continue to show your book more in non-advertised spaces because you have more traffic to your site, you have more interest. So Amazon wants to sell to people what people want to buy. So good. Okay. Maddie, you're on mute again.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, Janice says you don't start ads until the book comes out. Aside from the pre-order alert, do you do any promo before? We are told we should start marketing months before the book comes out. I know you have the plan, but do you start doing anything before then, or?
So I think it's different. So if you don't have an audience yet, you should always be building your audience, always be building your platform. So since we've spent a lot of time building our platform, it might be a little bit different where when our book comes out, we don't need to do a lot of the ramping up. But if you don't have a big platform, that's fine. You should start building your platform. So I don't think you necessarily need to ramp up to this specific book that's coming out, but you need to start engaging your audience, finding your people, finding your readers. And then as it gets closer to your book coming out, then I think you can start talking about your book. The hard truth, I love you all, but I'm gonna tell you some hard truths right now. You gain fans one reader at a time, one conversation at a time. You connect with somebody, you find somebody else who likes your book, one email. So, which is kind of like, you can take heart in that too, because you will make it as long as you don't give up. If you give up, then you will never find your audience, right? But they're out there looking for you too. So if you keep on finding those one readers at a time, they're out there, you'll get there.
Okay, great. And then Fred wants to know, what do you think of using ad algorithms?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't understand that question. Could you expand on that, Fred?
Fred, you're muted, so.
A computer person offered me an ad algorithm that would sort of guide advertising, and he thought that it would increase sales of my book. I'm not quite sure how it works, but it's some computer thing that would guide how you do your advertising.
That's interesting. I can't say that I'm familiar with that specifically, but I do know that there are companies that use the reporting available on Amazon, Amazon ads to develop auto-populated platforms. So perhaps that's what he was talking about. If you don't have the time and you do have the capital to invest in it, I'd say it might be worth a shot. But if you have the time, a lot of that data is probably available to you already on Amazon, that if you can just do a little bit of massaging and working with it. Because with all the keyword stuff that I mentioned, Amazon also has an auto targeted campaign. So you could use that to start developing a base, a platform for your future targeting.
Okay,
When,
great.
when I did it on my own and used keywords and all the other things, it was a dismal failure. So
It,
that's
it
why I'm
definitely
considering.
could feel that way, but you learned a little bit about the platform. You learned how to get in there. You learned how to set up an ad. And I think all of that is huge especially for anyone who's never done that. That could feel quite overwhelming to get in there and to know where do I click? How do I start my first campaign? How do I add a keyword? So for that, I think there's learning. And then if you run your reports and you see the keywords that you put in that didn't get any impressions, got impressions but no click, like you have data to go on and build on. And that's kind of what it is. You're just trying to shorten those failure cycles, as we might call them, the learning curve, and you're just going to continue to shorten it up until you hit that sweet spot. But I mean, Jonathan has a series that's been out for Forsaken Mercenaries maybe 2 years now.
I think almost 2 years.
And I'm still honing those ads now every month. It used to be every week, but every few weeks. So and that's not something that's going to stop, because the market is continually fluctuating. New readers are joining, aging into becoming readers. Trends are changing. The products on Amazon are changing every hour. So it's not a one and done process.
I think we
Okay,
kind of have the mentality for our company that it's not over until we win.
Yeah.
Would you advertise on Goodreads?
What's that?
Would you advertise on Goodreads?
No, I mean, I wouldn't.
I think we've tried before and we haven't seen a lot of the same results as like Amazon or Facebook.
Yeah, for the time and effort, I would not do that. I would invest my time and effort and money on Amazon and Facebook. Amazon is where they're buying the books, and Facebook is where they're hanging out. So if I've mastered those two areas, then I might look into others.
Yeah, it depends how much capacity you have. If you have time and capacity to take on like 3 or 4 platforms, then I think Goodreads could be one of them.
Because that's where readers are. Yeah.
Okay, so if you guys will hang around for some more questions afterwards, maybe we can finish this part off, then we'll stop recording and move forward. But I do have one question before we do that. Based on your publishing experience, what are the trends that you think authors should know, and the things that they should be keeping in mind that maybe we don't know, not being as closely tied to the publishing part of this and the marketing part of this as you are?
Publishing trends?
I mean, you listen to
Yeah.
some more books. I'm going to step out real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay,
Yeah, for sure. We have a babysitter hanging out with the wolf cubs, so Jen's going to make sure all is well on the Western Front. So I think publishing trends, we've seen more and more authors start getting their books translated, because I'm not saying that the US market is flooded, right? It's not flooded. There's still lots of opportunity, but the foreign markets, there's even more opportunity for growth in the foreign markets, right? They're not they're not the ebook and just audiobook, and the publishing market isn't as robust as the United States. So I see a lot of authors going to Germany. So that's why we went to Germany last year. And if any of you have been writing or publishing for a while now, you'll have seen some trends, and you'll see that, the market in the US is changing as more and more authors get in there. So I would say like Germany now is what US used to be like in 2013, maybe.
Wow.
There's just more authors now getting into Germany, and it's not taking as much advertising or as much work to get sales in Germany as it does in the US. So keep that in mind. And I had a call, we have an Amazon rep. So I had a call with our Amazon rep, and she was talking about Germany being the best place to go. And then she also told me that, don't tell anybody else, this is between us. But she said that France and Italy are some of the next
Italy or
markets.
India?
I'm sorry, France and India are
Don't
the
get everybody
next
excited.
markets. Yeah,
Okay,
Are the
we won't
next
tell
ones.
anybody. This will just be between us.
just between the 50 of us.
We appreciate that. So, and how
Oh.
about, go ahead, Jennifer, I'm sorry.
I was going to add on to that, that like we can all understand that 2020, the past year, has been an interesting year. We saw changes in the market. And when we spoke with other authors, our Amazon reps, different areas, what we found is that audio sales declined, podcast listening declined because there were no more people commuting, or very few people commuting, right? So that changed the market a little bit. And that was one of the catalysts for us producing our own content. The other thing is the reading. There's peaks of book sales in reading throughout the year. Last year looked different. And I think, it'd be interesting to just keep your ear to the ground and kind of just seeing what that looks like. So if you're planning a launch, when like might be a good time, and we think about it seasonally, and it's hard to think about seasonality sometimes as Southern California residents, because we're talking about 70 degrees to 80 degrees, 300 days of the year. So, but as people are indoors, that was a big thing. So when during lockdown, there was a lot more reading, but then the trends on reading kind of changed. People were looking for more fantasy and escapism. A lot of the post-apocalyptic genres didn't do as well. Why would I want to read about the world ending when it feels like my world is ending? So those are things that we've noticed in the past year and are keeping our eyes open in toward the future, what's going to come. We do know that right before summer ends, book sales kind of take a little dip just because women are the predominant readers of our genre specifically, and romance. So I think just our nature, I suppose, that we're getting ready for school to start. And then when school first starts, we're getting into new schedules. So those are some things to consider in terms of looking at the market from probably a fiction and nonfiction standpoint, unless you're into text and technical, and that's different. That's more of like a need-based than a preference. So I think that was it for market.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I hope everybody will stay around for a few minutes so we can chat offline here together. But I want to thank you so much. It's both of you. And I know you have a book coming out, right? Get It Done, or is it coming out?
So Get It Done is a nonfiction book that I have that's already out. So if you wanted to kind of have like some tips and tricks of the trade, how to produce, I'd recommend that one. And then if you're looking kind of like what our fiction voice sounds like, Hunters for Hire, we just produced our own audiobook. So we opened up a production arm for producing audiobooks with our company. So if you're looking just to kind of hear how we sound, maybe have a laugh, you can check out Hunters for Hire.
And where can we find that?
Amazon. You can find
Amazon.
the book on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both very much. And as I said, hopefully you'll hang around, and we'll see you all next month.